والفجر وليال عشر والشفع والوتر.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillah wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulillah. My brothers and sisters, we were talking about the story of Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salatu wa salam. And we spoke about Ibrahim pleading to his father, asking him to stop idol worship and to become a muwahhid, someone that only worships Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And his father says to him to go away from him. If he has abandoned his gods, then he didn't want him near him. وَهَجُرْنِي مَلِيًّا. He said, get away from me, get out of my house. So Ibrahim alayhi salam, he failed to convince his father. Did he stop there though? He didn't, because he wanted to move on and to call to Islam whomever he could find. And he started with those who were closest to him, those in his own village from his qawm. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in Surah Ibrahim that he spoke not only to his father, إِذْ قَالَ إِبْرَاهِيمُ لِأَبِيهِ وَقَوْمِهِ مَا هَذِهِ التَّمَاثِيلُ الَّتِي أَنْتُمْ لَهَا عَاكِفُونَ. He said to his people and to his father, what are these idols that you keep on worshipping, that you keep on going to? And then he mentioned to them, and then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us about a conversation between Ibrahim and his people. When he says, مَا هَذِهِ التَّمَاثِيلُ الَّتِي أَنْتُمْ لَهَا عَاكِفُونَ, they answer, قَالُوا وَجَدْنَا آبَاءَنَا لَهَا عَابِدِينَ. We found our forefathers worshipping them. This is our culture, this is our custom. But Ibrahim is trying to teach them that the one worthy of worship is Allah alone, and that these idols that they've built themselves are not worthy of their devotion and their ibadah and worship. And their conversation goes on, and then Ibrahim says that you and your forefathers were upon dalalun mubin, upon clear misguidance. And then they are surprised by this young man, how he is speaking about their gods and how he is refuting and rebuking them. And then Ibrahim finally said, وَتَاللَّهِ لَأَكِيدَنَّ أَصْنَامَكُمْ بَعْدَ أَن تُوَلُّوا مُدْبِرِينَ. I swear by Allah, I will plot against these idols after you turn away. So Ibrahim as a young boy is now planning and teaching a lesson to his village, to his qawm, to his people. And Allah tells what he did. For they used to have a day where they would go out like a Eid, a celebration, a festival. And Ibrahim decided he was not going to go, and he said to them, Inni saqim, that he was sick. And he said this so that he could stay back and then deal with the idols. So what did he do? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us that Ibrahim went to the place that housed their idols and their statues. فَجَعَلَهُمْ جُذَاذًا إِلَّا كَبِيرًا لَهُمْ لَعَلَّهُمْ إِلَيْهِ يَرْجِعُونَ. So Allah mentions that he took an axe and he destroyed these idols until they became like fragments and pieces. And in some other verse, Allah mentions that He actually spoke to them and said, أَلَا تَأْكُلُونَ. Are you not going to eat? مَا لَكُمْ لَا تَنْطِقُونَ. Why are you not speaking? So his people would bring food as a token of respect and worship to these idols. And that food would just be there. Can these statues and idols actually eat? No. Can they respond and speak? No. Can they do anything? Can they even defend themselves? The answer is no. And young Ibrahim then started destroying them and hacking them into pieces, proving that these are not gods but just man-made objects. And this, once he did this, he just left the final one. He left the biggest one, and he put the axe near it and he left it there. Then when the people returned from their festivals and they came to their idols that they used to worship besides Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they were surprised and they started asking, who did this to your idols? Who could do this? Indeed, whoever done this is from the wrongdoers, from the zalimeen. مَنْ فَعَلَ هَذَا بِآلِهَتِنَا إِنَّهُ لَمِنَ الظَّالِمِينَ. Then a few of them remembered that there was one young boy that would used to speak out against this, the idol worship that they were doing. And they said, قَالُوا فَتًى يَذْكُرُهُمْ يُقَالُ لَهُ إِبْرَاهِيمُ. They said there was a young boy, a fata, that used to mention them, meaning he used to refute idol worship and talked about these idols and how they cannot help. يُقَالُ لَهُ إِبْرَاهِيمُ, that is called Ibrahim. So now everyone is saying most likely he did it. So they bring Ibrahim and they ask him, أَأَنْتَ فَعَلْتَ هَذَا بِآلِهَتِنَا يَا إِبْرَاهِيمُ. Is it you who had done this to our idols, O Ibrahim? And then Ibrahim alayhi salam, the Khalil of Allah, the close companion of Allah, as a young boy, asked and posed a very important question. He said, Why don't you ask them? بل فعله كبيرهم هذا فاسألوهم إن كانوا ينطقون. Go and ask the biggest one over there. This God that you worship, speak to it and ask him, perhaps he did it or he did it. And the axe of course near the big idol. إن كانوا ينطقون, if they can speak. And everyone there knows that these idols, they cannot speak. They're rocks, they're stone. They can't do anything. You tip them over, they fall. Ibrahim just managed to destroy them. And then they said, you know, لقد علمت أن هؤلاء ينطقون. You know that these cannot speak. And then Ibrahim said to them, why would you worship one that cannot speak, cannot hear, cannot see, cannot harm you, cannot benefit you? ما لا ينفعكم ولا يضركم أف لكم ولما تعبدون من دون الله أفلا تعقلون. He said, how horrible are you? You and that which you worship besides Allah, أفلا تعقلون, do you not have any intellect? So here is this young boy, Ibrahim alayhi salam, using intellectual arguments, proving to them, teaching them, calling towards the haqq. And what was their response? Their response was, قالوا حرقوه وانصروا آلهتكم إن كنتم فاعلين. They said, burn this young boy. حرقوه, burn him. Right? وانصروا آلهتكم, and aid your gods. What kind of gods require our aid? Gods are supposed to aid, or God aids the creation. It's not the other way around. But it shows you how far gone these people were. They decided that Ibrahim went too far. They decided that he needs to be punished, and they used the worst type of punishment, which is fire. So Allah mentions to us that they built قَالُوا ابْنُوا لَهُ بُنْيَانًا. They built a long structure, a big structure. فَأَلْقُوهُ فِي الْجَحِيمِ. Throw him into this jahim, into this burning fire. It has been narrated from some of the scholars of tafsir that this was a huge building that they've built, and then they used to collect hatab, firewood, until it became such a scorching fire. And people would collect these firewood in seeking nearness to their gods and to their idols. And if someone needed something, they would say, I will worship my gods by collecting fire to burn Ibrahim. So his whole village is against him. Everyone he knows is against him. His father is against him. Can you imagine how he must be feeling? Now Ibrahim alayhi salam has no one for him there right now, except of course Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the fire was so hot that they couldn't even put him there physically. They had to use a catapult. So they catapulted him into the fire. And it has been narrated by some of the scholars of tafsir that while Ibrahim was strapped against and tied together, and he was about to be thrown into the fire, and everyone is watching, everyone is waiting for Ibrahim to be burnt alive, that it is said Angel Jibreel came to him, this powerful Angel Jibreel, and he comes to him and says, Ibrahim, I am here to help you. How can I help you? And Ibrahim alayhi salam said to him, I don't need you. Allah is enough for me. Allah is sufficient for me. It is also narrated in Bukhari that the statement he said, a beautiful statement, he said, Hasbi Allah wa ni'mal wakil. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is sufficient for me. Allah is sufficient for me, and He's the best disposer of my affairs. So, full trust in Allah. Full trust in Allah. He didn't recant, he didn't apologize. And what did they do? They threw him in the fire. But the creator of all, the creator of the fire, spoke, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Allah said, قُلْنَا يَا نَارُ كُونِي بَرْدًا وَسَلَامًا عَلَى إِبْرَاهِيمَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, and we said to the fire, be cool, be cold, وَسَلَامًا عَلَى إِبْرَاهِيمَ. And don't harm Ibrahim. Do not harm Ibrahim. So there you have the young boy that was calling towards the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone, Ibrahim alayhi salam, being protected by his creator. The fire didn't harm him. And if Allah wants to protect you, none can harm you. And if Allah wants to benefit you, none can stop that. And this is what happened to Ibrahim alayhi salam. He became a miracle. Everyone saw how he was saved. How he was saved. And it is said that his father saw this and said, what a great Lord you worship. نِعْمَ الرَّبُّ لَكَ يَا إِبْرَاهِيمَ. Now, the benefit of this story are many. Among them is number one, that Ibrahim, although he was alone, it didn't stop him from calling towards Allah. Another lesson we learned is that the people of shirk and idol worship, that they will go to far lengths to stick with their aqidah and their belief. We learned that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protects His Prophet, And if Allah wants to protect you, then none can harm you. We learn how great Ibrahim alayhi salam was, that he went through this trial, through this test, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protected him. This is just one part of the story of Ibrahim alayhi salam, and as we go along, you will see why he was such a great man and why he earned the title to be the Khalil of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Jazakumullah khair for listening. هذا وآخر دعوانا الحمد لله رب العالمين والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.